Join me as I dive into the shocking world of arms dealing and try to uncover the most surprising news from this controversial industry. Victor Bout, once one of the most infamous arms dealers in the world, is allegedly back in the business, according to recent reports from the Wall Street Journal. After serving years in a U.S. prison for trafficking weapons to rogue states and violent groups, Bout's return to Russia through a prisoner swap with American basketball star Brittany Griner was expected to mark the end of his notorious career. However, new claims suggest that Bout is now involved in efforts to supply Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi militants with small arms, potentially fueling one of the world's most devastating conflicts. If true, Bout's resurgence would not only mark a significant development in global arms trafficking but could also heighten tensions in an already volatile region. This development raises serious questions about the continued influence of one of the world's most dangerous arms dealers and the broader implications of his activities for international security. The resurgence of Victor Bout in the international arms trade presents a significant global security challenge. His alleged involvement in brokering arms deals with Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi militants could fuel further instability in a region already marred by conflict. The Yemeni civil war has created one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world, with millions displaced, famine threatening the population, and ongoing violence between the Houthis and the Saudi-led coalition. Introducing more weapons into this volatile situation increases the likelihood of prolonged conflict, greater civilian suffering, and broader regional destabilization. Bout's role in these potential arms deals is especially troubling due to his extensive history of supplying weapons to violent groups, rebel factions, and rogue states, often without regard for the consequences. His past clients included warlords and dictators, many of whom used his weapons to fuel civil wars and genocides. Given his reputation and past activities, Bout's re-entry into the arms trade raises concerns about the kinds of weaponry and expertise he could bring to the Houthis, potentially giving them greater military capabilities against both regional actors and international forces. Additionally, this development poses a direct challenge to international efforts aimed at curbing arms trafficking and controlling the spread of illegal weaponry. Despite Bout's previous conviction and imprisonment, his ability to allegedly re-engage in such activities highlights the limitations of the global community in effectively stopping high-profile arms traffickers. If arms dealers like Bout continue to operate with relative impunity, it undermines international laws and sanctions designed to prevent the flow of illegal weapons into conflict zones. The challenge now is not only containing Bout's influence but also addressing the larger issue of illegal arms trade that destabilizes entire regions and prolongs conflict. The re-emergence of Victor Bout in the arms trade sheds light on several interconnected issues: the ongoing illegal arms market, the challenges of regulating arms trafficking, and the broader geopolitical impact of conflict zones like Yemen. The persistence of illegal arms trade is a pressing concern that highlights the challenges law enforcement and international bodies face in dismantling these complex operations. Bout's history as a prolific arms dealer underscores the difficulties in fully disrupting these networks. Arms traffickers exploit weak governance, regional conflicts, and porous borders to move weapons from country to country, often facilitating violent insurgencies or empowering non-state actors like the Houthis. This problem is exacerbated by the lack of stringent international regulations on small arms. While treaties like the United Nations Arms Trade Treaty (ATT) aim to regulate the flow of weapons across borders, enforcement remains inconsistent, and black market deals often go unnoticed. Bout's alleged dealings with the Houthis may reflect the ongoing vulnerabilities in the system, highlighting how traffickers can evade sanctions and restrictions. The impact on Yemen and the regional balance of power. The potential sale of arms to Yemen's Houthi militants is not just a local issue, it has regional and international ramifications. The Houthis have been engaged in a brutal conflict against the Saudi-led coalition since 2015, with the war becoming a proxy battle involving Iran, Saudi Arabia, and other regional powers. Iran's support of the Houthis has been a key factor in sustaining the conflict, and Bout's involvement, if true, would add another layer of complexity. By supplying the Houthis with advanced weaponry, Bout could shift the balance of power, prolonging the conflict and increasing civilian casualties. This conflict already threatens critical international shipping lanes in the Red Sea, and the introduction of more weapons into the hands of the Houthis could lead to escalations, including more attacks on civilian infrastructure and commercial vessels. The U.S. and other international actors have been trying to contain these threats, and Bout's involvement could undermine these efforts. The challenge of global arms control. Bout's alleged return to arms dealing highlights the broader issue of accountability in arms trafficking. His initial arrest, extradition, and imprisonment in the U.S. were seen as victories in the fight against international arms smuggling. However, his re-entry into the trade raises questions about the effectiveness of global systems designed to monitor and prevent such activities. How can a convicted arms dealer, once one of the most wanted men in the world, so easily return to the same networks he once operated? This points to a larger failure of international cooperation when it comes to tracking arms dealers after their release. Bout's case is not an isolated one. Many traffickers, once freed, find ways to return to the business, exploiting gaps in intelligence sharing and border control. Moreover, the financial incentives for arms trafficking remain immense, providing traffickers with ample motivation to resume illegal activities. The risk of escalation in other global conflicts, beyond Yemen. Bout's re-involvement in arms trafficking raises concerns about the potential spread of conflict to other regions. Throughout his career, Bout supplied weapons to various war-torn areas in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. His return to the trade could signal a broader resurgence of arms flows into other conflict zones, where non-state actors, rebel groups, and rogue regimes are looking for arms suppliers. Should Bout re-establish his global network, the risk of weapons falling into the hands of other dangerous actors becomes a real possibility. In particular, Bout's history of working with groups that violated international human rights laws is alarming. His involvement in deals that fueled civil wars and genocides shows the devastating impact a single arms dealer can have on multiple regions. If Bout's network expands, it could reignite or exacerbate dormant or low-level conflicts, creating ripple effects that stretch far beyond Yemen. Geopolitical complications. Bout's reappearance also complicates the geopolitical landscape. Russia's tacit allowance of his activities, if proven true, suggests a broader strategy at play. Moscow's support for figures like Bout may be part of a larger effort to challenge U.S. influence and disrupt Western efforts to stabilize conflict zones. Given Bout's connections and expertise, his work could align with Russian interests, indirectly aiding allies like Iran or other anti-Western entities. The challenge for the international community, particularly Western powers, will be addressing Bout's activities without escalating tensions with Russia, a complex balancing act given the already strained relations between Russia and the West. In conclusion, Victor Bout's alleged return to arms trafficking poses multiple challenges. It not only threatens the stability of Yemen and the Middle East but also highlights weaknesses in global arms control efforts and international cooperation. His involvement complicates the efforts to curtail illegal arms flows, undermines attempts to resolve ongoing conflicts, and could have far-reaching consequences if unchecked. The international community faces a pressing need to address these issues, close the gaps in arms trade regulation, and prevent Bout and others like him from continuing to profit from human suffering. The key moment in this unfolding story comes as Houthi emissaries, engaged in high-stakes negotiations in Moscow, reportedly find themselves face-to-face with none other than Victor Bout, the notorious arms dealer once believed to be neutralized by his U.S. imprisonment. The revelation that Bout, after years of silence, is attempting to broker a $10 million arms deal with one of the most dangerous militant groups in the Middle East marks a critical turning point. This moment crystallizes the gravity of the situation. Bout's reappearance is not just a personal comeback, it signals a potential floodgate opening for the supply of arms to groups that thrive on destabilization and conflict. His willingness to re-enter the shadowy world of arms dealing, despite his past imprisonment, underscores how resilient and deeply entrenched global arms networks remain. More significantly, it introduces the chilling possibility of Bout's expertise and vast network being reactivated, with consequences that could ripple far beyond Yemen. Should this arms deal go through, it would not only embolden the Houthis in their ongoing battle against the Saudi-led coalition but also amplify the threat to international shipping lanes and U.S. military interests in the region. The prospect of Bout's weapons fueling further Houthi attacks on civilian infrastructure and military targets escalates the stakes, forcing the international community to confront the resurgence of a figure once deemed too dangerous to operate freely. This encounter between the Houthis and Bout, facilitated in Moscow, serves as a stark reminder that even after years of efforts to dismantle his operations, the allure of profit and the chaos of war continue to provide fertile ground for arms dealers like him to re-emerge. It is a decisive moment that signals the potential for a new wave of conflict, fueled by Bout's deadly expertise. The reappearance of Victor Bout in the international arms trade, particularly in negotiations to supply Yemen's Houthi militants, marks a sobering development in the global fight against illegal arms trafficking. Bout, once thought to be neutralized after his imprisonment, has re-emerged in a conflict already marked by devastation and instability. His attempt to broker a multi-million-dollar arms deal highlights the resilience of underground arms networks and the difficulty in permanently dismantling them, even after high-profile arrests and convictions. This situation presents a